This is your captain speaking.
Welcome back to This Is Your Captain Speaking, where we give you access to New Zealand's top technology executives and their stories. This week we're catching up with Kostia Shinderman, the founder of Alphero. He's going to talk to us about what IKEA's innovation path is, the risks around AI, and why he's a terrible leader and why that makes him a great one. Hello, nice to meet you. I'm Julian. I'm one of the directors at Potentia, head up the leadership research there. We're the largest technology recruitment company in New Zealand.
Awesome, nice to meet you. I'm Kostia. So I create PowerPoint slides is pretty much what I do for a living, but I work with large corporates and help look around innovation and startups around how they grow. That's nice. my thing.
Nice one. And kind of what's on your mind at the moment from an industry or from a leadership perspective?
Pretty much just everything's about to change. Everything's changing faster than it's ever changed in the last maybe 20 years. So kind of a reminiscence of the kind of internet days in the late 90s is happening again, but at a velocity much quicker than it was before. So yeah.
Potentially the shifts are even more seismic, right?
Much more seismic, way more interesting, really exciting, and there's going to be a lot of disruption, a lot of fear, but also lots of excitement around where it's going to go.
So tell me about your journey in leadership. What's your story?
So I started off in the internet in the early days. So actually
in the internet,
I was a little avatar in the internet. I don't know if you remember Telecom Extra in the Extra world.
Yes.
Yeah. So I helped kind of design that and make that clickable for that's how you navigate into the different kind of tourism, all those types of places. So way back in those days. So started off, in the early days of the internet, kicking off over here. And it was kind of reminiscent of now in some ways, but much more cowboyish, I guess, is the way to put it. So there was no rules, no kind of definitions around what's right or wrong and what you can do. There's no guidelines as to this is
new
how
land,
it works.
Right? They're just creating new land.
Pretty much, yeah. And you just had to work within a 50 kilobyte web page, and that was pretty much it. And then everything had to work within that. So yeah, we started off in those days and started off as actually a designer, as creative director there. And then I left and set up the Herald Online with Chantal, who was leading that space. And so again, the whole transition from a paper-based entity into a digital base. So I've been working a lot with those sort of businesses that change from core traditional into
1.0 to 2.0 at the time.
Pretty much, yeah. So that was my kind of early journey. And then went to the UK and I worked over there for about 6 years working with eGov and the tax department looking at their transformation into digital as well. So, it was the early days there too. Learnt heaps in the UK. It was much, the budgets were much bigger. Worked with amazing people over there and came back over here to have a family. It was pretty much, you come back and go, okay, well, time's up.
Yep.
And
fun's over.
Yeah, fun's over. It's all serious now. It's pretty much that, right? And so we came back and I joined BNZ.
Yep.
And actually, I do believe it was Potentia that put me into that job as well. So there you go. And we joined them, and then I was head of digital, sort of CDO kind of a role, we'd probably call that now. And again, coming into a very traditional bank, one of the worst banks from a digital point of view in the country. And we really needed to transform and change. And so I led a lot of the strategy and transformation and kicked it off into building a team and working with some amazing people there to kind of transform into a really good bank that it is now.
I'm a BNZ customer. I am impressed with their digital capability.
It's definitely a leap forward. It was definitely lots of interesting challenges there, balancing the funding that goes into recarpeting and repainting the branches, which is really where the biggest competition of funding was, is like, do we put new carpet or do we invest in digital? And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah. And then you think about it now, where you've got branches that there's a sinking lid on the number of branches that any bank wants to have, and the digital experience is the primary engagement now with all their customers.
It is, but I think there's still, it's interesting, like I almost wonder if there's a bit more of a comeback with branches around that person relationship at the right levels as well. maybe gone too far.
Differentiate, you mean from a differentiation of services perspective, like actually generating a customer experience that...
I think, yeah, with the banks, there's a real risk that they become very transactional, or a huge risk that they're very transactional, and their brands are not necessarily based on that. There's an emotional connection to there, and the branches enable that to happen. And so there needs to be a balance between, the harmony between digital and physical, and I think that they've probably
been over-indexed into digital. Yeah.
Potentially, yeah. Yeah, potentially.
And then so after BNZ?
After BNZ, I kind of had enough of corporate world and banged my head against the wall a bit too many times, and there's too many changes that you're not in control of as an employee. And I thought, okay, I haven't started my own business, and so I'd worked a little bit with Caroline Jew, who was at Frond doing mobile banking in the past, and the two of us caught up for a coffee. And I still remember the serviette that we had at the cafe.
Oh, I've got a serviette story.
I've got a serviette story, and I think at that time there was no real digital agencies that were focused on mobility as a whole, and mobile was very, very new in that time. And so we kind of drew this diagram going, okay, so you've got technology companies like Frond and Datacom, they're really technical, but they don't have customer experience, design or thinking in that way, or product. And then you had strategists, you had the PwCs and those at that time, which was purely just strategy, but no delivery or design capability. So we had a little triangle going, what if we had the mobile phone in the middle and we had technology, design and strategy around it? And that was the premise of Alphero when we started it. And we grew really fast. We're a top 50 company a couple of times.
The Deloitte Fast 50?
Yeah. So we got, it was quite a cool trajectory, growth from 2 people to about 50, 60 people within a short period of time. And, working with, started with mobility and moved into much broader transformation and change. And really enjoyed the first maybe 4 years of that, a lot around the growth space, and then it started becoming real again. And so that's where Caroline's really good at, and I'm probably less good at.
Yep.
And so I spent most of my time within Alphero doing strategy rather than execution and delivery, because I know where my strengths are, and it's definitely not that.
Right.
It's PowerPoint slides. So
new shiny things.
New shiny things, like what could you do? And so, spent a good few years doing strategies for you name it. Like I would go from the beehive in a meeting and then over to Te Papa and looking at the future of museums, like between the two in one day. And it was a really exciting work. And I really enjoyed it for a while, but then it got to this point of, and you probably asked me about New Zealand ecosystem at some point, but it got to a point of bravery. New Zealand corporates are quite risk adverse. The ability to really transform and disrupt within themselves was really hard. And so, they got to a point where I was going, okay, it's another strategy which might get to halfway through to full execution, probably not. And then I thought I've done what I could do in that space, and you can ask me about leadership, and I realise I'm not a great leader when it gets to that many people. Probably okay with a small amount. I'm not a good leader at all. And so stepped out of Alphero, and I'm still a little bit involved, and took the kids away, and we travelled for a year around the world and reset myself, and came back and thought, okay, so I've been a corporate, I've been set up a service company, right? I need to be an entrepreneur now. That's my calling, and started thinking about it. And then I've got quite a interesting dynamic family, which kind of takes a lot of my time, and so I really had to evaluate going, as I started understanding the entrepreneurial space and the founders, going, I don't think I've got that commitment in me to do that fully at that point. So I kind of stepped back a little bit and ended up investing in a number of New Zealand startups and getting more involved from an advisory point of view, and really working, helping work through how do they grow, but then also how do they get a foot into the first corporate client and the launch pads in New Zealand. I really enjoyed that. So one of my first investments was with Kogo.
Yes.
And that went really, really well. Worked with a number of banks here, then in Australia and the UK. And so I really like the concept of how do you bring a startup founder mindset, speed, agility, and all the kind of innovation space, and then how do you tie that with a large corporate? How do you tell the story within the corporates to go, how do they work together and how do they not squash them with their own processes and rigor and everything else, and how do they leverage the best out of them both. And so that was kind of me for a good year or so, just working in that space. And then I got introduced into a company called Co-Created, which, because I did go, I like this corporate and venturing and innovation space. And so Co-Created.
Like entrepreneurial.
Entrepreneurial, yeah. And it's kind of always been me, I guess. It's always, I've never been complacent with a business going, yeah, that works. I always want to fix something or create something new. Not always the right thing, but something. And yeah, we got introduced into Co-Created. They are a spin out of a company called Pre-Hype that launched in Denmark. So the actual story, actually that's an interesting story. Pre-Hype got launched with, Henrik was the founder. He was sitting on a plane from Denmark to New York, and he was having a conversation like this with I think it was the CEO or one of the directors of Maersk. And they were going, we can't do anything. You know, like we're a multi-billion-dollar company.
Maersk, the logistics company.
Correct.
Yes.
And going like, we really struggle. We struggle to drive change and innovation and everything else. And so Henrik was just saying, well, I'm off to New York working with a whole bunch of founders, and we've got workshops. Why don't you come along and throw your problem at us? And there's a whole bunch of founders that either got capacity because they still need to feed their family while they're kind of slaving away their startup, or they've just exited, or they're all in different life stages who are looking to, for good projects that actually are kind of tangible, they can make a change. And so that's how that corporate venturing started, and it's one of the early ones globally as well. And so it's a great story given where we are now. And so I started working with the Co-Created team over there, and I've been working with a number of amazing clients across the US and Europe as well. Major client was really with IKEA, and that was probably a good couple of years working with them around their disruptive and innovation space. So
they're kind of one of those organisations that people look to for the way that they're doing things is either a little bit off-centre, a little bit wacky, but then immensely successful, right, because of the way that their business model actually works.
Yeah, and hugely principled as well, so very...
There seems to be a theme for you, though, of these things. Like, Kogo's not an organisation that's just trying to make a whole bunch of money. They've got a quadruple bottom line. IKEA, engaging with them they've got sustainability at front of mind, and the type of customer experience. It's quite interesting. You talk about the fact that you're not a great leader, but just because you don't enjoy the people management of a business at scale doesn't necessarily make you a poor leader. I think that there are lots of different manifestations of how leadership shows up. Myself, I'm not a great people manager. I don't enjoy it. I love people leadership, so setting vision and pushing towards a goal and getting people on the bus. But do I want to sit in one-on-ones every week and talk about people's specific levels of performance and whether they're hitting their metrics? No. Now, that's a part of recruitment, right? Like it is the data is the lifeblood of how you make decisions. But leadership for me, it might be commercial, it might be delivery, although easy to tell like delivery. But it also can be related to strategy. It can be related to governance. It can be related to all these different things. And so I think that when people are beginning their leadership journey, I think we are typecast to believe that we've got to be a manager. Right? Yeah, you're right. And that if you're going to advance your career, you must be leading a big team, or you've got to be leading leaders. And that's true. It is an absolute fundamental of some parts of leadership, but it can also be that, hey, I've got an unfair advantage in seeing over the horizon. I've got an unfair advantage in setting up some kind of system that's going to make our delivery more predictable. And you must have bumped into customers where you're like, hey, this person's incredible at being able to articulate a vision, but they're terrible people manager, right?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. There's many of those.
And it almost doesn't go hand in hand, right? Like the founder thing, because you've got this vision that you've got, you're going to blast through, and actually there's so much collateral damage and people that are burned along the way. But then at the end of the journey, when it's successful, people kind of retrospectively fit that back in and go, well, look at what an amazing leader they are. Like the people the people that have been damaged along the way. That's not true.
It's very true. I think I'm quite in awe of some when you look at some people that are really good at those sort of like the empathetic one-on-one conversations and the nurturing and the guiding of a team, and like huge amount of respect for that. But it's I can do it if I have to, but it's probably not my preference. But to your point, I do like the more. I guess it's where could you go? How do you get people excited? How do you get people and kind of motivated to drive for change? Is definitely my bag, but that sometimes doesn't bring everyone on the same journey as well. So, but that's the way. And I guess I've also learnt, to be really honest and frank, one of my reasons of leaving the corporate space was really where I think the leadership values were not aligned with my values as well. And so I remember it was a few months before I decided to leave, but we had a performance review and I got a really, really bad rating. That was bad. And it was just like, doesn't engage, doesn't participate, doesn't bring in the rest of the... Like, it wasn't so much my team, but it was all my boss and their peers were giving me kind of bad reviews. Right. At the same time, we've fundamentally transformed the bank, became one of the best banks in the country, did it within time, within budget, partnered with Xero and saw that grow and scale and did all sorts of great innovation shifts. And so it kind of stepped me away going, okay, well, the values that I have around kind of where I believe is where I like to be is not necessarily the same way of demonstrating their leadership in a corporate, which has very structured approach and engagement and stepping up the ladder bit by bit. And it's probably not true for every single organisation, but it definitely made me kind of go, is that really where I want to still be? Yeah. And I think things have changed, and the corporates that I found that you develop the strategies for that actually go much further down the path are not necessarily those. They actually tend to be much more the tier twos, or the more hungry, a bit more kind of leadership driven by a CEO that actually drives change. And they have, and I think that the need of hunger and the need of transitioning to protect your core and things actually drives a better leadership capability within the corporates I've worked with. The ones that
it does seem though that if you've got that willingness and kind of ability to embrace risk that sits at that executive layer, that does step down into the other parts of the organisation, and it's proven bunch of different times that's the case. I guess the challenge with a lot of the big enterprises is that because they are focused on optimization and operational excellence, all of their drivers, investments are into going that way. And so to come along and try and change that, turn the Titanic, it's really hard because they're kind of on rails, right? And they're built to be on rails. And so the whole entrepreneurship, the whole venturing piece is saying, you keep doing that, and we'll build something over here, and just give us this time or this budget to be able to do those things. Do you find that is the right way to go about things? I mean, I'm kind of preaching to the choir, but... Yeah,
no, absolutely. I think it's interesting. I've had, one of my epiphanies is around, with large corporates, they're like a tanker ship where probably they're a little bit more nimble than being on rails is maybe the metaphor I'd use, but more like a big tanker ship. And if you can change it by doing a strategy by 1% or 2%, 2 degrees of a shift, over time that makes a massive difference, right? Of either beaching or your ship or reaching a different destination. And so I've seen many corporates internally really want to drive this massive shift. And I think over time, as I've matured and got grey hairs, are going to go, no, 1 degree is enough over time. And then if that works, then you can kind of start unlocking that capability to shift.
It's challenging though, right? Because that organisation has to be patient and committed. That actually that 1 degree is going to lead to quite a different vector over a period of time. And so, a lot of those old adages of like you're planting seeds that the next generation is going to shelter under the tree of, or they're going to be able to pick the fruit from that tree. So I think it's quite challenging, and being able to sell that vision to these people, saying, hey, it may not be in your tenure that you see the revolution of this business.
Correct.
And that's quite challenging for people.
And that's at the corporate one. I mean, there's other kind of models that you can apply, which is probably more, if you're using the same metaphor for the ship, is you can kind of kind of launch a few of the smaller ships off the side. And to your point, like if you want to really disrupt and change, then trying to shift that whole tanker to go into this completely different direction is you're at risk of all the cargo being, like if it's near the 4 days, it will go off, or, there's so much risk of making too much of a change. So yeah, you drop in other types of little boats and they go off in their own little spaces. And yeah, you do need a separation to drive that speed. But that in itself has got its own challenges as well, is how close to the mothership can you be? How much independence do you really give them? Because also corporates aren't really that patient to go, we'll do an innovation, we'll throw this thing in here, we'll give it $1 million and it's going to be successful in a year. And the reality of startups is that it's not going to be successful in a year. Some might be, but
we
some
might need to launch 11, right? And then one will come off.
Correct. Or you just need to go, okay, take the qualities of that boat and go, okay, it hasn't been commercially successful, but you've got a really good team. Or you've got certain capabilities which are amazing. Okay, let's pivot you. And then that just takes a bit more trust and confidence into different types of metrics to go, what are you really trying to do here? Is it around building commercial revenue, or is it around going, actually we want to build to learn new things, is the value that we want, and then how do we nurture that?
I think irrespective of even from looking at ventures which are birthed out of venture studios or venturing from enterprises and or just startup founders, from experience of talking to a lot of founders over the years, it does seem that often the first one, whether it's a startup or an entrepreneurial venture, doesn't work. But that team then does the second one, and that's a bit better. And then the third one, that's the one that cracks. And so suddenly you've got a 10-year overnight success, right? Like it does seem that is a pattern that kind of emerges. So, with the work that you've done with the startups, what are you telling these folk that's saying, hey, I'm behind you, I've got sweat and time and money to put behind you, but do you say to them, hey, this it's likely this won't work? Or do you say, hey, if we can do these things, here are some lessons that I've learned from others, and here's an approach that is going to give you a more predictable idea of whether you're going to be successful or not?
I think that the nature of the founders is they're already incredibly sharp around what can work and what not. So they don't really need to know the risks. They already manage that. They're naturally embedded with risk to do what they do. So I guess where I've been involved more is going, where are the tailwinds, where are the macro trends around change and pivoting, and helping kind of define what that looks like and help facilitate that. We had a workshop yesterday with one of them, and they're on their third pivot now to that point. Went down one direction, kind of got almost there, changed it, went on tailwind all around environment. No one cares about environment now. It's all just like...
It's a bit broad. No one cares about environment. But certainly I imagine that it's come down the priority list for a bunch of...
It's hugely down the priority list when you've got wars and other things going on. And so, the
it's so difficult to
tailwinds
navigate
change.
that stuff from advice perspective, right? Because holding true to your values whilst also adapting to the environmental conditions, there's always this wrestle and conflict and friction between those two things.
Oh, a huge amount. And that's where, like, if I was to learn around leadership throughout my career, my first half of my career, if you ask me, well, where did I learn the most? It was probably in the last 3 years by working with founders.
Right.
100%. Like, I've been blown away their perseverance, their ability and the agility to shift and change, to lead teams, to lead conversations when they're not naturally comfortable in certain conversations as well, and dealing with directors and investors. And it's
You've got like a profile of like things that you're like, when I find these kinds of people in the startup world, those are the people that I want to back, because early stage investment really is about investing in the person. Yes, the idea, but investing in the person, right? Do you have a kind of a thing where you're like, okay, that's the checklist for me when I'm looking at those leadership aspects? I'm like, cool, you've got me. You've got me into the next bit.
Yeah, 100%. Both from a personal investment point of view, it has to have purpose for me to invest. Probably I should have been maybe more commercial than purpose, but I kind of, that's my thing.
What about the characteristics? Like you talked about perseverance before, you talked about adaptability before. Like, is there kind of a hot list for you of characteristics that you're looking for? And yeah, this doesn't mean that all the founders need to do these things if you're going to talk to Kostia, but yeah, is there a kind of a set of criteria that you're like, cool, I'm behind you?
I think the ones that say no to my stupid ideas are the ones that I like the most. And the ones that say yes too, but with conviction, right? Like, yeah. But I think what I've been blown away with a lot of the founders would be that they're very, very focused around what is they need to do to get to the next stage. And then they've got a real strategic view, but they're just really hyper-focused around, okay, I need to achieve X milestones to get to this stage. And the ones that can actually go, no, this is a distraction, it risks our core focus, then I think, you got way more confidence in that. So it's really, hyper-focused, I guess, if you put it that way.
On execution.
On execution
and
milestones.
Outcomes. Yeah. And specific, the critical path to get to wherever they want to get to.
Yeah. And
so I think everyone can wave their hands and talk about their big dreams, right? But it's around, have you got evidence of that ability to execute directly across a period of time?
Correct.
I want to come back to what you said before around how, there was this moment for you when you got this 360 review and some feedback, and that was kind of the point that you were like, right, actually, perhaps working inside this organisation, these are not my people. And so just curious about kind of the feedback that you've had over this period, and what's been the key piece of feedback that either kind of punched in the guts or was really strong for you and kind of set you on a new path?
Okay, there's probably a few little moments in my life. One of them was quite a funny one, which is going back to me not being a great leader, where I was probably micromanaging someone, right. and around the UX space, and I got given a present that was a book called UX for Dummies. So I had to step back a little bit and go, okay, what have I done wrong? So that one was that was definitely a bit of feedback.
So again, you're a founder of a digital design studio and people giving you UX for Dummies books.
Pretty much.
Tough.
He was right in some ways, but maybe the delivery could have been done.
Sounded like an introvert giving you feedback, right?
But I think probably one of the most, I think actually one thing that stuck with me a long time was with a client where I did a strategy for them, and they came back and they said, yeah, it was good. I mean, a whole bunch of it, there was like 98% of it was things that we already knew. And there's nothing new. It was just re-articulated what we kind of already knew in a bit more structure. But there was 2 or 3 gold nuggets in there, which would just like completely change our thinking around what we do. And I think that stuck with me a little bit, going, I don't need to reinvent the wheel all the time. And a lot of what I've learned a lot with the strategies that I do is more, it's actually around, people already know what they need to do, it's just coalescing it. And so when I talk about doing PowerPoint slides and being facetious around it, it's kind of true. It's basically, people are really bad at storytelling when they're deep down in what they do.
Yep.
So it's just abstracting it. And actually, people are also in corporates really bad at connecting things to each other. And so...
Is that because they stay in their lane, or is that...
Yeah, they stay in the lane, and people are a little bit worried about being controversial, maybe within their peers, or challenging their peers, or asking the right questions. And so,
do you think that would make them better at leadership in those kinds of organisations, to be able to take wider views, or I mean, enterprises can be quite political places where your network and your support structures do allow you to elevate inside the organisation. So, because the characteristics of leaders within startups are probably quite different from leaders within large-scale enterprises, right? And, you do need to find your own kind of path, but what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's like everything though. When you are deep down in something, it's really hard to look up and out. And the whole purpose of having a consultant or someone, or even if you've got a marriage that's in failure, having a counsellor that comes in and gives you perspective. Yeah. it's the same thing. It's not rocket science. It's basically, just giving you a bit of perspective and you owning and being self-aware around that perspective as well is really the key thing too. So I think with the leaders, it's hard. How do you step back a little bit? How do you get the time to go, what if?
Because you're in the business, not on the business, right? And that's that. It's often, I know that enterprises tend to use consultancies as validation of their own thinking already, but there's an external point of view. And sometimes you can cut through, or because of the way that you're communicating it, you get a unified perspective, incorporating everyone's things rather than going toe to toe with all these different perspectives. It's interesting. And what else? So this piece of feedback for you kind of shaped what?
I think what it shaped for me was that probably two things. One of them is there's a real art in storytelling and being able to communicate that, and that there's value in that, and you don't have to be the smartest person in the room. You just have to work with people, so you don't have to try too hard.
Weave a narrative. Yep.
And then the second one is that it only takes one or two really good ideas to spark some shift to drive change, and again, it doesn't have to be revolutionary, but it just starts somewhere, and that's probably that's the key feedback.
When you think about kind of the feedback that you then have given to your teams or your customers, what's kind of been the thing that you've continued to come back to and has just helped out everyone that you've been involved with? They might not have enjoyed it at the time, getting that feedback, but what have you found?
I think it's when I work with teams, I like to work with them kind of just pushing around the ideas and getting them to own the ideas and go, okay, let's go deeper. Okay, why is that a problem? Why is that a problem? And getting people to take a little bit more ownership around the visioning. So I've enjoyed that. I've enjoyed working with teams around their career paths as well, actually, ironically. Like there's so many junior designers and developers and others that, more designers as well, that are kind of, where do I go? What are the things I want to work with? I enjoy working with the colleagues around, I guess I've had enough grey hairs to understand how large corporates work to kind of go, it's not your circus and it's not your monkey. Those sort of conversations, I think I get
equipping them with perspective to be able to kind of shape their thinking rather than them waiting for, doing as well as they can, but then, not getting the feedback that they want or not getting the promotion that they want. It's like, hang on, you've got to look at the whole system here.
And think about yourself too, and go, where do you want to be? And don't try to expect the corporate to basically bend to what you want to do. You figure out where you want to go and how do you use your job in the nicest possible way to get to where you want to be as well. And take ownership of your own destiny rather than just going, okay, there's a formulaic approach to how I succeed.
Yeah, that's interesting, right? Because I think that also the great thing about large organisations is that they do often have the resources to be able to fuel some really interesting opportunities and projects, etc., that you can work on, rather than the kind of the hand-to-mouth shoestring budgets that you see in smaller organisations. But, you've got to be careful about where you spend your tokens, and that's probably true of both. But having that, tip your head up, look at the whole perspective, ask yourself why that you're doing these things, and does this exist here, and is this going to take me closer to where I want to actually get to? I think too few people actually really understand where they want to get to, and so working on your own idea about what that destination looks like, and then pooling your resources, pooling your skills to be able to take that path. Leading yourself often is how you turn yourself into a great leader, because saying I'm going to do this anyway, whether you like it or not, and you can join me on the journey, or I'm going to do it myself. That kind of ability to stand alone and be committed to this direction can be the thing that kind of turns you into a leader. And suddenly you're like, like you yourself, you say, I'm not a people manager, I don't like those sort of things, but you walked your own path. You decided that's where you wanted to get to, and funnily enough, you led the way for a whole bunch of others in that regard. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm going to put some words in your mouth, but what kind of made you fall out of love with playing the kind of the role at Alphero?
That's a good question. I think
Obviously, still a director, so you
Still director. I don't even think I've had a proper conversation with Caroline about this yet. So if she's watching the podcast, this is for you. I got to a point where we would build websites for banks and telcos and everyone else, like large organisations, and it became, I wouldn't say it, how do I say it? The problems were consistent over the last decade, right? We need to have a really nice way of getting into something. We need really good login. We need a self-service portal page. We need to be able to pay someone, top up a bill, do whatever it might be. And so the clients that we had and the work that we were doing was really purposeful and really great. But after maybe so long of me doing it, it got to a point of going, it's exciting, and I really enjoyed it, but I wasn't passionate about it. And so for me, not having that passion of doing those sort of deliverables was probably why I moved away from the delivery side, and the fact that I was really terrible at delivery. I would just really worry everyone.
Tortured artist, creative.
Well, you do a scope, and then I go, what if you did this? What are you doing? And I've got my own team looking at me going, you're going to blow out the budget. Stop it, go away. And so I spent more of my time on the strategy work, and then on the strategy work, I guess I got to that point again going, how many organisations in New Zealand really have the competitive pressure to really drive that change? And the ones that, I actually did an analysis, I did probably about 50 strategies, I did a whole list of all the different companies I've done work with, and I colour-coded strategy completed, funding unlocked by board, program started to phase 1, 2, and then completion. And there's not that many goes all the way to completion. Quite a lot of them, the funding gets unlocked, and then basically, I can say maybe a CIO might come in and go, burning platform, pull all the money, and then it just goes into repatriation or something, and not true transformational change, which the board or executive might have endorsed.
And look, the industry would also agree with you, right? To say, how many real digital transformations have been fully successful over the last 10 years, and almost digital transformation and innovation are dirty words now, right? Like they're seen as buckets that you just burn cash within, because they haven't delivered the results. Correct. And sorry, coming back to what you're talking about.
But there's many that have. I mean, maybe it's the ones that I haven't done the strategy for that have been more successful. It's probably the way those that have been much more structured and changed and things like that, rather than. But no, there have been a lot that have done well. But it's again, it got to that point where I was just creating more PowerPoint slides, and I think I just needed a change.
Interesting. And then kind of when you look ahead and you look at, you've been through all this change, you've been one of those agents of change locally and globally. So when you look at the industry and the tech sector and digital, etc., and you look to that next horizon, which you've historically been pretty good at seeing what's coming, what are you seeing right now? What kind of scares you? What do you what would your predictions be?
What scares me is that I've probably only got about 4 to 5 years of good in me left to
I think it's a little more than that.
To work in the space. It's changing so much fast that I do feel like, there's going to be a massive shift with how businesses adapt and transform with AI. I was wondering in this podcast, going, can I even get away with not using AI? We lasted 30 minutes or so. Yeah, I guess what scares me is there's going to be a lot of displacement around the way that people work, and there's going to be a lot of shift in that space. There's going to be a lot of younger interns coming through into the workforce that have traditionally had a really secure role in the future that just won't be there anymore. I think that's going to be really hard. I think for the new breed coming on is how do they get the opportunity to learn, because mistakes will be less, and there'll be more. I guess AI will structure things in a much more safe, controlled way as it learns and gets better and better. And so the opportunities for younger people in certain industries worries me.
Isn't that a phased thing though, right? Like we see this thing because we can't see what the second or third permutation of this change is going to be, where you've got organisations that are AI native businesses that are built on top of that stuff. Like, I know that we're talking about what kind of freaks you out where with what's coming based upon the trends. But do you think there's a level of permanence in that dip, or do you think that?
I think there is. I think there's and I don't know what that term would be, whether it's a 10-year term or 15-year term until it comes out of that dip. It will change, right?
Gotcha. Yeah.
But I guess everyone's talking about the youth coming in as interns or new jobs is a problem. But then they're going, but then, there's going to be now a gap in middle management. Yeah. And then I'm looking at going, but that's because AI hasn't solved middle management yet. But that's going to start changing as well. And so I guess there's just a real shift to the skill sets need to shift from hard skills to much more being able to be kind of softer skills and the ability to learn and adapt. And so I've got time if I could tell a story, which was an interesting one. We had my daughter had an 18th party. 18th. And we had another group of a lot of kids in our home, which is doing my head in at the moment. But towards the end of the night, I went out and I sat down with one of the boys and I was like, "Oh, what are you doing?" He goes, "I'm going to go to university." And my dad told me I should be doing electricians or, do something that's my hands. But yeah, I'm keen to do university. I said, "What are you doing?" He goes, "I'm going to do world studies and language or something like that." And I said, "Oh, that's awesome. Good on you." And then we're just talking about it. He goes, "Yeah, I just want to do a whole bunch of different subjects because I don't know where the world's going to be in the future. I want to have variety and in that space." And then there was another boy that goes, "Are you talking about university? Can I ask you something? Because you're successful. Can I ask you what I should be doing?" I said, "Yeah." He jumps in. "I'm going to be doing accounting and commerce, and I'm going to."
Oh no!
I want to be a consultant at Deloitte. I was like, "Oh, fuck."
Deloitte, if you're watching, absolutely, that's fine. But yeah, look, there is definitely a sunset on that stuff.
It's a harder space to be in too, and I think it was more not the fact that there will not be roles in that space. It's more about if you've got a very clear mindset of this is what I want and this is where I want to be in 3 years' time. I just think you need a bit more flexibility in the future, and I think the having more variety in your workforce is going to be, because people learn these tools, they're going to learn how to do things really, really well. But it's the building relationships, communications, and growth is going to be really key.
Yeah, and the mindset of that you're never a finished product. You need to be continuously learning. You need to be putting time into doing whatever. But then, I guess from your own journey, you just stayed kind of curious and just kept on kind of experimenting with things and mucking around with that and thinking about this. But then because you were taking those ideas and pursuing them and turning them into something, that's when you're getting that meaningful kind of change or learning or growth, right?
True.
And I think that's when you look at what's happening with the schooling system, there's a lot of typecast subjects where you are learning this thing, and you might be. What has been neat is the evolution of seeing a lot more group work, having to work with people that you probably wouldn't necessarily work with, who come from different backgrounds, who play different roles, and you together coalesce your skills and generate some kind of outcome, project, experiment, whatever. But a lot of the traditional kind of rote learning, a lot of the skills that it's setting you up for may not be fit for purpose within the kind of the commercial world, and I think that's kind of scary when you look at that bit stuff. But then I think that again maybe that's a generational kind of interval where there are those who are in junior roles now, those who are coming into university now, they're going to be the most affected, whereas the ones that haven't, maybe those things will start to change. I don't know. But
it does, like to ask what scares me, the change in this is it's kind of a deja vu of the internet in the early days, but on steroids is kind of the way of looking at it. Yeah. It's exciting.
It is exciting. And what do you think New Zealand needs to be thinking about with that? I mean, you've done a lot of stuff globally. We know that typically New Zealand tends to be somewhere between 2 and 6 years behind whatever trends are going on offshore. The good thing about that is we can incorporate the winning ones. But what do you think when you look overseas or you look at the kind of the local technology industry? What do you think those leaders need to be thinking about?
I think they. What do they need to be thinking about? I think they need to be a little bit more scared They need to be a little bit more aggressively competitive as well.
Taking risks.
Take more risks. I mean, New Zealand's a really interesting kind of space because we're so isolated. If you look at the large businesses, we're either state-owned enterprises or Australian-owned enterprises, or we truly New Zealand growth. There's many of them, but not that many, and not enough to really drive a shift. Right?
Still 80-90% is small to medium-sized enterprises.
Correct.
Right?
And so, I think we need a little bit more. So the story would be, working with some of the American teams I've worked with in the past, and I've gone, I don't know if we can do that. That sounds like a lot. And they're looking at me like I'm weird. And it's like, what do you mean? We'll just grow the team. We'll just do it.
Yeah.
There's this, and I'm myself like quite conservative. I found myself being conservative and working with internationals, and especially Americans more so, is like you don't be conservative. You just
ambition first.
You throw things at it and then make it work.
Working with an American customer, I'd never heard of the solution, which was to grow our way out of the problem.
Yeah, and
that's a fully committed part of most strategies with those types, because they're kind of like, well, in the words of Neil Young, they kind of want to burn out and not fade away, right? That's the kind of the uncompromising way that they set that stuff. But is that really an expression of the way that Kiwis tend to run businesses? Is it realistic to think about that? Or do you think that there's a kind of the younger folk who have seen the opportunity to go global, have seen the opportunity to meet global standards that are coming through, that are kind of like, yes, there is more ambition, there is more...
I think there's definitely startups that are thinking that way, going global. I would, if you ask me what I wish New Zealand corporates would do, as opposed to what they will do or should do, would be basically become a launching pad. I think there's a real interesting opportunity in New Zealand to go. We're small enough to become an innovation pad to help small businesses or startups succeed. So if the banks go, right, okay, well, it will not be commercially viable for us to grow this thing, why don't we make it work here? Because if it works here, it grows a business that can go outside of the country and succeed. And how do we create that environment over here for success and for startups to go, even from Australia or anywhere else, come here, do it here because it's easy enough to do it. But we don't do that. We don't make it that easy. And so in some ways it's easier to go and start something in Australia or the UK or elsewhere than even our own. There's too many stories I've heard of startups going, I've been talking to this enterprise and this enterprise, and I can't sell and I can't do anything. And then so I've just thought, no, I'm going to spend a bit of time focusing on the US, and in 3 months they sign up Disney. Yeah. There's too many of those stories, and
it's
which shouldn't happen.
And that is, would you say that is an industry leadership perspective? Would you say that is a kind of a corporate leadership perspective? What is the thing that could be altered to be able to make that stuff more accessible, more successful? Talked about risk before. Is it just risk, or is it actually policy that's
maybe curiosity? Maybe it's a bit of that. Maybe it's also about just a kind of a principled direction around the purpose of the business. So, if I go back to the likes of IKEA is a great example, and these other companies that are really purpose-driven first, and then commercially strong as well. But
pretty good distribution channels.
Yeah, exactly. But they start with principles. What problems do they want to solve globally? And I'm not sure if we're really seeing that much here.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And then when you look at kind of what the sector has now, what do you see being you mentioned some of the softer skills that you see lacking, the softest capabilities lacking. Is there anything that you kind of like explicitly would call out and say, hey, if we can do this, then we're going to be better off?
As an industry? I think AI is the key one. Like productivity around AI is ridiculous. I've started really using it a lot for a lot of the work that I do, and it's
phenomenal.
It's phenomenal. It's much faster. So there's things that you can do in 3 hours that you could do in 3 months before with the larger team. So I think being faster and adapting that into our workplaces is going to be really key.
Do you think like every New Zealand business leader leading question, but do you think every New Zealand business leader, whether they sit in technology or not, needs to be working on their business for the injection of this kind of thinking? Yes, you've got to worry about your governance. Yes, you've got to worry about your risks, your data, etc. But do you think that everyone would benefit from that, of pushing that and experimenting and putting something in place to be able to change your business?
I think they have to. Even really smart digital businesses need to radically shift who they are, because the way that people use their channels and find them and engage with them is going to change big time. And so if you're not investing in this space now, you'll get fallen behind really, really fast. It's like a bank not having a website or internet banking. It's
fundamental.
It is going to become fundamental, and you need to shift. And when we started with, let's say, banking's a great example. You'll have internet banking on the side, but everyone's still going to go into a branch, right? Now everyone's on internet banking, but is that the way it's going to go in the future? Is it going to be embedded finance? Is it going to be completely different the way you're thinking? And you need to put your bets into it now. And you need to go faster and experiment, because you're not going to get it right the first time, and you don't have that many years to get it wrong. You're going to go through similar cycles, right? You're going to try things, learn, get it wrong, you might get it right. And so the faster you can get going on that, and do it to learn and fail.
Yeah, I think it's that comfort as well with that failure, isn't it? Well, look, thanks, man. Appreciate you taking the time.
It's been good. Thank you.
Thanks.
This is your captain speaking.